Welcome back to TechniqueWOD. Today we're talking about strengthening your rotator cuff so you can prevent injuries and be way stronger overhead. So a common pattern that we see with especially new people when they get into lifting weights is that they do a whole lot of pressing and they don't do as much pulling. So I might do a lot of push-ups, a lot of bench press, maybe even some overhead work, standing barbell presses, dumbbell presses, kettlebell presses, and I don't match my pressing with equal amounts of pulling. I don't do as many ring rows, strict pull-ups, barbell rows in equal proportions to the amount of pressing that I do. I want to match 1-to-1 usually pressing and pulling, and that's not a very common thing to see amongst beginners until you get more experience and you start to learn more about the pulling exercises, which certainly aren't as popular. You know, bench press is talked about much more than barbell bent over rows. So because the popularity of bench press is way higher than barbell bent over rows, people will do way more bench presses and not as many barbell bent rows. And so what happens is you get some type of an imbalance. Your pressing muscles get strong, your pulling muscles, they're way behind, and it takes a long time to get those pulling muscles to catch up. So that's a very common thing. If you've been training in a CrossFit gym or you have some amount of strength and conditioning experience, you probably already know to get that roughly that 1-to-1 ratio between pressing and pulling. If you did pressing for a long time and now you're just learning about pulling and you're just trying to catch up your pulling volume to your old pressing volume, then maybe you do twice as much pulling right now as you do pressing. You have a 2-to-1 ratio of pulling to pressing just so you can catch up and get some amount of balance back in your body. So that's a very common thing. Another really common thing is that with pressing and pulling, since your pec is a shoulder internal rotator and your lats, your big back muscles, are also internal rotators, often doing a lot of pressing and pulling with the two examples I just used, with bench press and with barbell bent rows, those are both internal rotation based activities, since I'm using primarily at the shoulder here my pecs and my lats. So because I do a lot of internal rotation, I rarely match, or you probably don't have to do 1-to-1, but you should do some amount of supplementary external rotation work. That way your rotator cuff can stay nice and strong. So if you don't know what a rotator cuff is, I'm going to have Mike come out here for a second. This is Mike Knowlton, he's one of our coaches here at Faction. If he faces this way, basically what your rotator cuff is a series of 4 different muscles that float on your scapula and go out to your shoulder, or rather to your upper arm, your humerus. So if my shoulder blades are here, just so you can get a picture of this, if Mike raises his arms up overhead, my shoulder blades kind of float up like that, and then when he goes back down to normal, they float back down together. If he rolls his shoulders forward, they'll float out to the side. If he brings them together, they'll come out like that, okay? So if I use this hand on his right scapula here, your rotator cuff, again, is 4 different muscles. There's 2 muscles, one here and one right below it. This is your infraspinatus and this is your teres minor. And they basically wrap over the shoulder like this. So when these muscles contract, they're going to contract this way. And as they contract this way, they're going to pull him into external rotation. As they relax, he's going to kind of go back down the other way, okay? So those are your rotator cuffs, external rotator muscles. Those ones are often left a little bit weak for a lot of people that don't train to actually make them stronger. They kind of neglect them and then they get weaker over time in comparison to all the other muscles that are internal rotation based, okay? So those are going to be the muscles we focus on today, those muscles that are kind of right here that wrap around the shoulder, okay? Just to round out this big picture of your rotator cuff, there's another muscle that runs right here that kind of goes right over the top. And so when it contracts and it shortens here, if he just relaxes, when this shortens, it kind of raises his arm up just like this. And then finally the last one, if my rotator cuff, or my scapula rather, is here, it's on the underside. And then what it does is it sneaks from the underside here and it wraps under like this. And so when it contracts, it pulls down like that and it internally rotates Mike's arm in this case. So if I have a shoulder blade right here, I have muscles on top and muscles on bottom, and really what they're doing, we come around this side, really what they're doing is some are sneaking around underneath like this and some are sneaking over the top like that, and then you can see those muscles are hugging the top of his humerus, and it's basically, I'm gonna hug you, it's basically pulling the top of his arm into his shoulder like this. That way his upper arm, or his whole arm rather, doesn't fall off of his shoulder blade. Because if it has this very small socket, where the head of his humerus is sitting right there and it rotates around in that socket like that, it can easily just kind of slip off, right? Because it's not wrapped around. There's no bone wrapped over this bone like in your hip. Like your hip's like this, where like there's bone over your leg bone. But your shoulder's not like that at all. It's like a golf ball on a golf tee. Okay, it's not really in there. It's muscles and ligaments and your joint capsule and tendons that are holding it on there, and it easily can slip off if your rotator cuff isn't actively pulling and keeping it on your shoulder blade. Okay, so that's kind of what your shoulder blade looks like. So again, for the rest of this technique-WOD, we're going to show you exercises to make these two muscles right on top that wrap over the top here that help pull you into external rotation. We're going to make those muscles stronger. That way you have more balance for your rotator cuff. All right, so here's a few exercises you can do, either doing your warm-up or probably at the end of your workouts. For the most part, you're not going to go to failure. You're just trying to get those muscles to activate, so to speak, and to get a little bit stronger, but fatiguing them 100% all the way to failure generally is not that good of an idea, because it's going to help you, or not help you, but rather cause you to lose some amount of stability in your shoulder. So maybe if you're about to take a couple days off, you can go to failure, but for the most part, especially if you're going to work out another time that day, if you're doing doubles or if you're going to some type of sports practice or whatnot, you don't want to have a totally 100% fatigued rotator cuff, because it's going to make your shoulder unstable and it's going to make you more likely to get injured. So if you're going to go to failure, you need a big window of rest on the order of at least 24 hours, preferably more, maybe up to 48 hours if you're going to go all the way to failure. So for the most part, the exercises look like this. They're all face pull based. So a face pull is anytime you pull something towards your face like that. So if you have cool crossover symmetry bands, which are getting more popular now, you can just get some tension. Generally, we put them a little bit low, waist height or knee height, and then you're basically pulling right up towards your face. Okay, almost like you're going to this like bodybuilder double biceps position like this. So I'm not just pulling my elbows back like this because I'm internally rotated right now. This is externally rotated. This is internally rotated. So I'm not just pulling here, although there is one type of face pull. I want to make sure I pull my shoulder blades together and then I externally rotate, which means my hands go back as far as I can get them. Okay, so I'm pulling here. Again, I'm not here. I'm up like this. My elbows aren't way behind me where I'm like this. My elbows, my hands are right around the same, in the same plane, so to speak. So an easy way to see where that's going to be. So you put your hands out just like this, and you bring your hands in where you're basically touching your fingers to your ears. That's where you're going to be. If you can't touch your ears, then you're not externally rotated all the way. Okay? So it's an easy way to think about that. And there's many different variations you can do with the crossover symmetry bands. I'm not going to go over all of them though. This is the general idea. If you don't have crossover symmetry bands, what I like to do is just take two bands, just tie one on totally normal, and then grab the other one and put it in there. Usually I kind of just shake it to get it even. And then what I do is I put my thumb in like this, put my thumbs in like that, and then I grab around like this, and then same thing. I step back, shoulders together, hands come all the way back to my ears, and then I'm pulling like this. Okay. If you don't have any bands at all and you want to use small plates, you can just grab a 2.5 or a 5 pound plate, and then basically you're just going to bend over, nice straight back, shoulders back, neutral spine, same thing. I'm just going to pull the plates up to my ears just like this. Okay. And again, there's a million different variations with each one of those things that you potentially could do. For this video, I'm going to keep it as simple as possible and just show you those three. But a quick caveat before we end. So we're trying with these movements to work on pulling, scapular retraction, and then also with external rotation in that face pull position. So that kind of kills two birds with one stone. It helps with your pulling strength and your scapular stability strength, and it also helps with your rotator cuff external rotation strength. So overall, it's gonna help make your shoulders healthier. You're gonna be less likely to get injured. You're gonna be stronger overhead, or just stronger with your upper body in general, especially being on the rings in an unstable environment. Having a stronger rotator cuff makes you much more stable, so when you're on the rings, you're less shaky and you're very solid on the rings. Okay? That being said, your rotator cuff is not the only thing to consider if you have some type of shoulder injury or if you're trying to get your shoulder stronger. For the most part, if we go from kind of core to periphery, starting with our spine, we always want to have, instead of a rounded over upper back, we want to get more thoracic extension by doing extensions over a foam roller or over a barbell, some type of thoracic extension. And then from there, we want to work on having stable shoulder blades. That way, when I reach overhead, my shoulder blades upwardly rotate all the way. Usually the limiter with that is lower trap strength. Go Google that. Go Google lower trap activation exercises or lower trap strength or scapular stability strength. And you can see exercises on that. Maybe we'll do some TechniqueWODs on that in the future. And then on top of that, you want to make sure that you have adequate mobility at your actual shoulder joint. Do you have all the shoulder flexion you need overhead? Do you have full external rotation? Do you have full internal rotation? Can you reach up? Can you reach up and touch your opposite shoulder blade? Things like that. So there's all kinds of assessments for getting or having and testing to see if you have enough mobility in your shoulders and the whole rest of your body. Certainly we have maximum mobility, which is designed to do that exact thing. So if you want to test your mobility, you're welcome to look into maximum mobility. But the whole point of this conversation right now is that working your rotator cuff and making your rotator cuff stronger, it is important, but it's only a small piece of the big picture. So if you have a hurt shoulder, you definitely should incorporate some type of face pull or external rotation based strengthening exercise routine into your workouts, into your warm-ups, and maybe into your post workout or your end of the workout. The little stuff you do just to kind of keep good maintenance on little things. Where you're done with your squats, you're done with your Metcon, you do some external rotation work. You do, if you want to do some abs or something, you do some abs or something. It's like the little stuff you do at the end. It's a small piece of the big picture. So incorporate this stuff into your warm-ups. But if you already have a shoulder injury, then be sure to get that checked out and find out if there's any other deeper underlying problems that are more important than just fixing your rotator cuff. So if you want more videos like this one, you can go to barbellshrugged.com, click on TechniqueWOD. If you go to the episodes tab at the top of the page, there'll be TechniqueWOD in the drop-down menu. Click on that. All the episodes are in the library. If you want us to do a cool TechniqueWOD on something that we haven't done one yet, click on Ask a Question, which is in the top right corner of the website. And there, one of those questions is what TechniqueWODs would you like to see in the future? And if we like what you have to say, then maybe we can do a TechniqueWOD on exactly what you want in the future. I'll see you another day.